Hello, and welcome to the Scott Mize Show, podcast focused on body and hormone optimization and improvement for anyone who's looking to get jacked, build muscle, lose fat, improve their hormones, feel better, or improve their health. Here, I interview experts in lab work, hormones, bodybuilding, coaches, bodybuilders, and everyday people and senior executives who have improved their hormones and improved their body. Just a quick disclaimer before we get started. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Anything you hear should not be taken as medical advice. Please consult with your physician before making any changes to your diet, exercise, or supplementation protocols. This podcast is brought to you by Element Electrolytes. Element Lemonade is finally here. It's great for a hot summer day, workout, or just enjoying with a cold beverage at your desk. Check it out and get your free sample pack of their favorite flavors, along with any regular purchase when you use my custom link, which is drinklmnt.com/Scott Mize. The sample pack is great for anyone who's interested in trying their most popular flavors, or anyone who wants to introduce a friend to Element. Go to drinklmnt.com/Scott Mize to claim this awesome deal. Now on to the show. Tommy Conley is an NPC Classic Physique competitor who just won the overall at the NPC Midsouth Muscle Showdown. He's coached by Dom Kuza and is a father of 5. Tommy's wife, April, is an IFBB Pro in Bikini and 3 times Masters Olympia qualified competitor. Welcome to the show, Tommy.
Hey, appreciate you having me, Scott. Thank you.
Yeah. So we were just chatting a bit before, but congrats again on your win over the weekend. Super impressive. So talk a little bit about the show. Why'd you enter it? What were your expectations, and what went well?
Yeah, for sure. So we started prep back in mid-February. So I have been in prep now for about 19 weeks, something like that. And which is typical for me.
Okay.
We usually get up, and it's not, I don't gain a lot of fat, but I do put on a decent amount of size. So I usually get 35 to 40 pounds in my off season.
Okay.
That's about where I am. Usually that's how high I get up to. And so it takes a while for us to get back down. So when we got back down, I've done several national shows in the past. So I know what to expect, and we can get into that later about, results and all that stuff. But I know what to expect. So these are kind of an opportunity for you to, knock some of the rust off, get some of the jitters out, get your posing routine down, anything, and most importantly, get feedback from the judges. There are certain things that, you can't fix in a limited amount of time. This particular show was 2 weeks before Junior Nationals, which is next week. So really just a 2-week turnaround there. Yeah. So there's not too much that I could fix if the feedback was, really bad. But if it's conditioning, or if it's, need to work on posing or something like that, that we can fix. So the goal was just to do that, just to get some stage time under my belt for this season, since I had been off since North Americans last year. So yeah, when I told Dom, I said, I don't have any expectations. If we win, great, but that's not the goal. The goal is just the time. And so we really also, with us doing national shows, we weren't fully peaked. Like, I was not, what I consider to be stage lean. But sometimes at these local shows, you can get away with not being quite as lean because it's not a national competition.
Yeah.
So you can get away with, if you're 2 weeks out, it's not going to show as bad as if you show up to North Americans and you're 2 weeks out. As you know, you're about to get squashed.
Yeah.
So when I went out there for prejudging, moved me right to the middle. So I felt good about that. And then once we got into the overall, I was able to close it out. So that's the story on that particular show.
Very cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would say you were pretty damn lean.
Hey, thank you.
It's crazy.
The cool thing about that was, so you mentioned my wife is a IFBB Bikini Pro, and I am as into my career, or, whatever, as I am, and I enjoy it. I enjoy watching her 5 times more. And so I'm at every one of her shows. I don't miss, but she had a show that's in Denver. It was the Mile High Pro. Yeah. And so I was like, man, I hate to, but I can't go to this one. So the whole time backstage, so that her particular show went prejudging straight into finals at like 1 o'clock. So I get off stage, I'm running backstage to figure out where she's at and how she's doing. And she ended up, so she's 42 years old, but she won the 40 and over category. And then she finished sixth in the open, which is pretty big for
Yeah,
somebody in their early 40s to,
of course.
So when we got on the other side of the weekend, I won the overall and she won, the Masters division and then finished sixth. When you get on to the other side of those weekends, you look back and you're just like, man, that was pretty friggin' cool.
Yeah,
So yeah, it was definitely a killer weekend for sure.
that's so cool. Yeah, power couple. You guys are crushing
Yeah.
it.
I
Yeah, I
appreciate
mean, Bikini is so deep in the open for the pros. I mean, top six is incredible.
Man, it is, and I'm glad I'm not a judge because I can, same with you probably, you can look at a classic lineup and you can say, I see what's going on. I see why they're doing what they're doing. But I've been watching her do Bikini for 4 or 5 years now, and I still am like, I don't even know what I'm looking for.
Yeah, it's so tough. It's so
Yeah.
tough. Well, awesome, Tommy. I'd love to just like rewind a little bit and
Yeah.
talk about how you got to where you are today. Even how did you grow up? When did you start lifting and why?
Yeah, for sure. So I was born 1978. And so when I was younger, the movie stars were Sylvester Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jean-Claude Van Damme and, on and on and on. But they were larger than life. They were cartoon characters,
Yeah.
but they were action movie stars. And I looked at them and I was like, that's what I want to be. And my dad was into bodybuilding, but not so much. He never stepped on stage or anything. He loved the sport and was a gym rat and had a closet full of magazines with Ronnie Coleman and Dorian Yates and Sean Ray and all of the guys from kind of the 80s and early 90s and all that stuff. And so when I would sit down, and just other people are, reading sports magazines or whatever, and I'm flipping through here and there's Cell Tech, ads and all this stuff. And I see these huge dudes and I'm like, man, that's what I want to do. And so I got really into lifting in high school and early into college, really, really started kind of dove head off into it. I had some cool mentors that kind of, that took me by the hand. And I kind of look at bodybuilding as sort of like a discipleship program in that I guess what I mean by that is, you have a bodybuilder up here, he should have, or best case scenario, he's teaching a guy who might not have quite the skill set that he has, some of the things that he knows. And then this guy is teaching this guy down here some of the things he knows. And so it kind of, the knowledge trickles down. And I just had some older guys. We had a powerhouse. I live in Memphis and we had a powerhouse. We don't have it anymore, but we did back then. And it was the gym for that scene.
Cool.
And so I got involved in that really early. And then I met a girl when I was in my early 20s, and that she became my wife. And so we got married, and I had she wanted a family, and so we did want a family together, and so we started a family. And I had my first daughter when I was 23 years old.
Wow.
So really young, and the next one was a year behind her. And so I say all that to say in my teens, bodybuilding kind of went by the wayside because I was just trying to, be a dad
Yeah.
and, a decent husband and all of that goes with it. And so as time went by, as my 20s kind of drifted by me, I fell out of the gym and I lost a lot of passion for it, honestly. And so when I was in my mid 30s, probably about 33 or 4, my youngest daughter was about 2 or 3 at that time. And I just went to, I had gotten what I consider it, from a, an American standpoint, I guess it wouldn't be morbidly obese, but to me, with the past that I had and what I knew about fitness and all that, I had gotten obese.
Wow.
240, 250, not like a bodybuilding 240 or 250. It was pretty fat. And so when I went to take her to, put her in her bed one night, and her bedroom was on the second story of our house, and I, went to take her upstairs, and by the time I got up to the top of the stairs, man, I was out of breath. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't catch my breath. I felt like I was going to throw up, and I was like, man, this is not how I want my life to go.
Yeah.
And in that I can't enjoy my kids. I'm not active. I'm eating in a way that has no purpose. And so I made a decision that I was going to, get in better shape for myself and for my family. So I started down that road and went, and with the schedule that I kept, I was working 60 or 70 hours back then. And so with the schedule I was keeping, I would have to go super early in the morning, and I would just go, I take that back. At first I was working out in my attic because I didn't have the time to go to a gym. I had to do something, and that way, if the kids wanted something, or they could come in there and play their toys, and I'm, working with a real remedial dumbbell set or whatever, just doing what I can.
Yeah. What did you do for work at the time?
At that time I was a machinist.
Okay.
Yeah. So didn't have a whole lot of free time. And then as my hours kind of got kicked back just a little bit, where I had a little bit more free time, I could go in the mornings and kind of get my workout in. Which, shout out to those morning people. I don't know if you're one of them, man, but no, I can't do it. But I did it for a long time, fasted, fasted workouts and the whole 9 yards.
Stuff.
So that's how I got into it. And then that was, when I was 32, 33. So I had 6 years of lifting or so back in the gym under my belt. And at that point in time, she's my ex-wife now, but we were having a lot of problems, just, marriage problems. And so the marriage terminated. And once I got, on the other side of that, I mean, to be frank, I got very, very addicted to alcohol. I started dating a girl who, she was an alcoholic. And so in my mind, to keep up with her, and also my entire 20s, like I said, were non-existent as far as like a normal person. I guess I say normal, there's different stages of normal, but a typical American 20-year-old is, enjoying their 20s. They're traveling, they're dating, they're figuring out, like, what do I want out of life?
Yeah.
Whereas I was already knee deep in life when I was 23 years old.
You got thrust into adulthood very quickly.
Exactly. And so when I hit those late 30s and I was divorced, it was like my 20s all over again. The 20s that I didn't get to live, I was like, okay, now I'm gonna live them.
Yeah.
And I had my fill of that for sure. And so I, just headed down some dark roads as it relates to that. And finally, I just got to the point where I was like, man, I'm either going to have to give myself something to work towards, a goal of some sort, or I'm going to end up in rehab. And so I went back to my youth and what I had remembered and the passion that I had for bodybuilding. And I was like, I'm gonna go all in on this. And in reality, my first show, which was a local coach here in town, was the promoter, and his name is Chris Claudy. His son is Dylan Bear, who owns Bear Aesthetics. So I don't know if you've heard of them before, but a big name in the coaching industry. And so he was the promoter for a show here in town called Battle on the Bluff. And so I just went to him and I said, hey, Chris, man, I don't know if I have the genetics for this. I don't know if I have the work ethic for this, but I'm willing to do anything you tell me to do. And I just want to set this as a goal to keep myself out of trouble and give myself something to strive towards.
Yeah.
And so I did that, and, I didn't have towards the beginning of prep, I was still, trying to, have some drinks now and then and not fully on board. But the more, I guess, the healthier that I got and kind of started to get away from that, I saw that it was just, it was poison in my body. I didn't feel good. And and I also wanted to give, I try not to do anything where I set a goal, halfway. If I set a goal, I want to, do the best I can. I'm not saying that's, win overalls and pro cards and go to Olympia, but what's the full potential of what I have and what, I've been blessed with. And so I wanted to chase that. And so we got through the prep and lost the girlfriend somewhere along the way during all that, which was okay. But I got on the other side of that, and you can go back and look at my NPC pictures from that show, and they're not good, but when I go back and look at them now, it's such a I don't want to say badge of honor, but at the same time you look back and you say, no, I pulled myself out of a really bad situation
Yeah,
and gave myself something to strive towards. And so
that's amazing.
that was kind of what brought me back to bodybuilding, and that was in uh two, 2019
Okay.
was when I did my first show. And then I've had a couple of, three coaches since then, and really, really high level coaches. But once I got with, and you know this because you're with Dom and he's been on your podcast before, but once I got with him, man, like everything, you find out really quick, excuse me, that there's levels to this game.
Yeah.
There are levels to this game. And the first diet that I go back, and I every now and then I'll go back and look at my, old log books and stuff like that. And I'll look at the, some of the diets that I was written back then, and man, they were very elementary, I guess you'd say. And, distilled water and the whole 9 yards about, a different peaking strategies that, like, I'm sure were the big deal back in the 2000s and 2000s and all that stuff, but have kind of been, as I've worked with Dom, I've seen that there's just a much better way. And
Yeah.
so yeah, that's what brought me to where I'm at now.
Cool. Yeah, that's amazing. And thank you for sharing that. It's very impressive that you're able to work your way out of that. And what an inspiring prep. I mean,
I appreciate
I
it.
can see how you would get emotional just looking back on the photos, like you said. So is this your second year competing with Dom as your coach?
Yes, yeah. So I picked, funny enough, so I did Masters and North Americans back to back 2 years ago.
Okay.
And I finished second at both, which,
Wow.
if you know anything about nationals, second is the first loser. So unless you're at junior nats, and then you get a pro card, but most of the other shows, if you're second, that's just not good enough.
Yeah.
And so I came out of those shows, and there was some peaking strategies that I felt like could have been better. And I'm not the type. I'm not a coach hopper. I know that that's pretty prevalent within the industry for people to, get fed up with the results that they're seeing or how their placements are or whatever, and not take any of that blame themselves, but say, well, it's my coach's fault. And I knew I had faults, but at the same time, I felt like I needed some new direction.
Yeah.
So Dom was there at North Americans in Pittsburgh a couple years ago, and he was, sitting on the back row. And this is after I had, the show was over. He was just sitting there kind of scrolling through his phone. And I just went up to him, and I knew who he was. I knew he was with Camp Jansen. And I just said, hey, man, I would really appreciate the chance to kind of talk to you, have you assess, where you think I am, have you assess, if you think I have, pro potential. And if you're willing and you see those things in me, then I would like to talk to you about, hiring you.
Very cool.
So yeah, man, he looked at my stage shots right then and there, identified some things that I needed to work on, and I didn't tell him what the judges said, but he pretty much repeated what the judges said. And so at that point, I knew, he had an eye for my physique, just, a judge's eye, which is what I need. I don't need, I'm not a yes man where I just need to hear, that a boy or constant praise. I would rather hear the reality
Yeah.
of, I don't need you to blow smoke. I need to hear, what do I need? I have a goal. What do I need to do to get to that goal? And that's how Dom and I's relationship has been, is we're friends, but at the same time, like, I look at him like a boss.
Yeah. 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 Likewise. I really look up to him, which is interesting because we're both older than him. But
Yeah, for
yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. I did my first show last year. I only started really bodybuilding in COVID. I hadn't even touched a weight until I was 27.
Holy smokes.
Yeah, I hadn't, been to the gym. I never benched in high
Yeah.
school, college, or anything. And I just started getting into it, and yeah, decided to compete for the first time last year and really loved it. Did a local show, did pretty well. And yeah, I promised my wife that this is the last year. We'll see about that.
Oh man. So she's not on board.
She is. I think she's just looking forward to the next chapter.
I
I
get that.
think the hard thing for her is like part of it is she wants to travel more. And we go on like a couple big trips a year, but it's hard to be like, 6 months a year I can't travel, So
Yeah,
yeah, we'll
that's
figure that out. We'll figure that out.
yeah, for sure, man. But it's and that's one of the things that gets asked of us often is, how do you do prep together? And I'm
Yeah.
like, how do we not?
Yeah,
Because
you've done it. You've done it forever. So I'd love to hear your advice.
yeah, so when we do it, we start prep almost, within, usually our shows are picked out within a 2 or 3 weeks time frame. She
Cool.
usually does a 20-week prep as well. And
Okay.
so when we prep, it's usually neck and neck. I might be a couple weeks ahead of her, she might be a couple weeks ahead of me. But
Okay.
for us, it works because, and I'm not saying it would for everybody, but for us, it works simply because I know how she feels. She knows how I feel, which is dead, the last few weeks,
Yeah.
hungry, irritable. We're cooking the same food. And so it just, it's a very difficult, I'm sure your wife eats really healthy, but she probably doesn't eat a bodybuilding meal. And so when
Yeah.
you're eating chicken and rice at night and she's like, I don't want that. I want,
Yeah.
real food. It can become difficult just because I don't want to say you feel that separation, but it is like we're kind of doing we're making two different meals here rather than, enjoying this spaghetti together or
Yeah.
this, whatever, this steak and potato or whatever together. We're not really eating dinner together. It's kind of more just cohabitating.
Yeah.
And so for us it works. Now because I am in my mid 40s, I do know that I do not want to be the 60-year-old bodybuilder. I appreciate that and I admire it. I also don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So I know that we're closing a window right here where
Sure.
I'm getting on the backside of my career, can focus more so on her. But yeah, for us,
Yeah.
man, it just works. So are you
Yeah.
classic or are you men's
Yeah,
physique?
yeah. So I'm doing classic. I did classic last year. I did light heavies too. Just wanted to enter everything.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
I did true novice and open in both classic and open bodybuilding, and I won 3 out of 4 at a small local show.
Nice, bro.
So
Do you like one more or the other? That you like
I
open or
liked I liked them both. I mean, I did better in classic. I'm still small, and so yeah, I really enjoyed it. I lifelong athlete. I competed in rowing for 8 years, including in college. I was recruited for rowing, and so having the
dude?
chance to like be on stage competing was just like I got fired up.
Yeah. So
So
cardio is no thing to you. Like
I love cardio.
I'm sure you do.
If I could only do cardio and not lift weights, I would. I'm that guy.
Yeah.
So yeah, I had a great time, and I probably don't belong at North Americans, but it's like if this is going to be my last year, I wanted to do it. I want to have that experience.
Yeah,
So
for sure. And I tell other people too, until you go to, for one, North Americans is just an experience. North Americans, Nationals, Junior Nats, Masters Nationals, Universe, all these shows are experiences. Because when you go to, like I was at Midsouth Muscle Showdown last week, it's not a knock against the show. It's just a local show. And so you
yeah,
come and there might be, backstage, there may be 40 people, competing in different divisions, and 10 of them may look like, true bodybuilders or true bikini athletes. And then the rest are, no knock on them, but they're just, they did this as a bucket list, or they're just trying to, or they lost, 80 pounds and they want to show their family like, hey, look at the cool stuff I did. But it's not like that when you go to North Americans. You walk back into the locker room and everybody belongs. Everybody is the biggest dude at their gym or in their
Yeah.
city, and so, but it does give you a chance to say, here's where I stack up against the best, rather
Yeah.
than, it's hard to get a bead at some of the smaller shows because you're like, I don't know. I mean, I won, but did I beat anybody that, had the same passion for this as I do?
Yeah.
So it's definitely an eye opener as far as, how the experience of it all.
Yeah. Yeah. I was, because I live here in New York, and the venue I did my show at is the Teaneck Hotel where Universe is.
Yeah.
They have shows there all the time, and so I was like, oh, maybe I'll do Universe. But Dom was like, no, you should definitely do North Americans for the experience. Like, I love that way, the way that show is run, and I also thought it would be cool to, like, travel and go do a show somewhere else, because
Yeah.
I can't just do only shows at Teaneck.
No, but I will tell you, bro, like Pittsburgh. So my wife and I have been there about 5 times, and that city is amazing.
Yeah.
It's one of our 5 favorites.
Yeah, I'm really excited. It's
Yeah.
gonna be a blast. So what's the plan for the rest of the year?
Yeah. So the plan for we're in peak week as of today for junior nationals in Chattanooga, which is next weekend. And that's it. As you and I talked about before we kind of started rolling, it's going to be tough shakes for me as far as getting a pro card there, just because they don't have masters at that show.
Yeah.
So it's, going to be me shoved into the open against, people that I have a son that's 21 years old. So, these kids are going to be his age, and so it's a little bit mind blowing. But at the same time, it gets you in front of Sandy Williamson, who's,
Cool.
head Olympia judge.
Yeah.
That way you can get her feedback. And, even if I don't get my pro card, which I'm not eliminating it, I'm just saying it's going to be tough.
Yeah.
But even if I don't, I get in front of her and she can say, need to work on your posing, need to bring conditioning in some more, need to,
Cool.
flex your hamstrings better, whatever the case may be. And then when she sees me, 2 weeks later, which it will be at Universe at Teaneck, New Jersey, then maybe I've improved on those things she asked me to, and kind of stand out. So the plan right now is to do junior nats and next weekend, and then 2 weeks after that, if we don't get a card, to go to Universe. And then, beyond that, I don't really, I mean, because this is either probably most likely my last year or next to last year, I'm pretty committed that if I've got to stay in prep and Dom allows it for, at my peak for 4 to 6 weeks to try to knock out some of these national shows and jump on an opportunity, I'm willing to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be cool. We can split Dom's travel fees to North
America. Always a good thing, bro. Always a good thing.
But good for you for going for it.
Thank you.
In the open. I think that's really cool. I think a lot of guys would just only target masters shows. So I think it's really awesome. And I mean, you've shown that you belong. So like you definitely deserve to be there. And
I appreciate it. I would, my wife asked me my goal the other day and for that show, and I was just, first call outs would be amazing. That would, I could live with that. If it got no better than that, I'll live with anything, because I know I'm bringing the best I've ever brought, and I can be proud of that. But that would, if I had a goal, that would be the goal.
And do you have to, I think that's a great goal. I probably have a similar goal for North Americans, or more specifically, just don't embarrass myself.
Yeah.
Show that I at least belong.
Dude, I've seen you. You're not going to embarrass yourself at all.
We'll see. But do you have to, is it tough making weight for you at all, or is that not a problem?
It's been a problem before, because I really wish, this is one thing that I wish about NPC, is that they would take a hike and,
It's inconsistent. Yeah.
set that height and it's consistent and it's across the board.
Yeah.
I'll go to one show and I'll be, so 5'11" is 217.
Wow.
And like you could be a quarter inch over and you're 217. But if you measure 7 or a hair under, you're 209. So it's an 8-pound drop.
That's huge.
Yeah. And so I've been to shows before where I was, a hair over 5'11" and the cutoff was 217. And then I've been at shows before where the cutoff is, or I measure a hair under 5'11" and the cutoff is 209.
Yeah.
So usually I'm right there around stage time. I'm usually right there around that 205 in the morning, 207, something like that.
Yeah.
Which if the cutoff is 217, no problem. Like we got
Yep.
that. But here I think as I'm getting older, I'm shrinking. And until you have fat pads in the bottom of your feet that make you a little bit shorter and all that. And
Yeah.
so by the time I get to, I'm banking on being under 5'11", which puts me at 209, which isn't really a challenge because we wake up at 205. It's just kind of monitoring that through the day and making sure that we don't kind of have a bounce. But so to answer the question, sometimes, but typically it's not been.
Okay. That's good. Yeah. I was heighted at 5'9.5" last year. So that's 202.
202. Yeah.
Yeah. So hopefully I get heighted the same here.
What are you weighing in the morning right now?
I'm like 211.
Yeah.
And I'm, 8 weeks out.
Yeah.
A little more than 8 weeks out. So
Dom will get you right there where you want to be.
Yeah. Yeah. We're losing like 3 pounds a week at this point. So we're flying.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, awesome having you on, Tommy. Can't wait to watch you compete next weekend, and meet you at the Universe as well, hopefully. So yeah, let people know where they can follow along with you, and thanks so much for the time.
Yeah, man. So my Instagram is tommy.b.conley, Conley. My wife, some of your listeners want to follow along, April Conley, IFBB Pro, April Conley. But yeah, man, I appreciate the time and appreciate you having me on.
Of course. Have a great rest of your day, Tommy.
All right, brother. Looking forward to meeting you.